This video is about the new gods, or the Faith of the Seven. Now, the Faith of the Seven is very much, in my opinion, very much like most of the religions. If you think of it as there is one God, but every person in Westeros prays or honours one of the seven aspects of that one God, and in that respect they have become minor gods in their own rights. So if now I'm going to tell you a bit about each of these seven entities of one God. We have the Father, who represents judgment, and he's usually kind of depicted as a bearded man who carries scales, and he's usually prayed to for justice. The Mother represents motherhood and being caring and all that. She's prayed to for being able to mother children and compassion, and she's usually depicted as smiling, caring mother who embodies the concept of mercy. The Warrior is prayed to for courage and victory, and is usually depicted as a man who is carrying a sword and a shield. The Maiden is usually prayed to protect a maiden's virtue, and is usually shown as a young girl who is carrying a bucket. The Smith is prayed to for the all the things that need to be done, so builders and smiths and all the sort of jobs that need to be manually worked on. And he is usually shown as a very strong man who has a hammer or another type of tool that he would use in his job. The Crone is usually prayed to grant wisdom, and she is usually shown as an old woman carrying a lantern and carrying books full of guidance. The Stranger, who is the final one of these seven aspects, is usually shown, and he represents the unknown and death, and that is usually shown as a tall, hooded figure who never shows their face. So these are the seven aspects of this one God that the majority of the seven kingdoms worship. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a list of things that are usually done within the Faith of the Seven. Just so you know, the head of this faith is called the High Septon, and he is cancelled by a council of the most devout septons and septons and septors, who counsel him in all things to do with the faith. Of course, the headquarters of this religion is the Great Sept of Baelor in the city of King's Landing, and they have all the big cities and the castles around Westeros have their own septons or scepters in those castles and cities to spread the word of this faith around Westeros. Like I said earlier on, you've got the Septons and then you've got the Scepters, which are the female counterparts. And they themselves don't really do much to do with the religious aspects of the faith. What they usually do is they are, particularly in castles of great houses in Westeros, they are the governesses to the young ladies of that castle, to educate them in the ways of the religion, of how young ladies are meant to be seen and how they are meant to show themselves to the rest of the world. So, like I said, that is a brief outline of what the faith is all about. So, going back to giving you situations where the faith of the Seven is in use. The first one is a naming of a child. Now, in the faith of the Seven, the naming ceremony would happen in a sept. And what normally happens is the septon is standing in the centre of the sept, and the parents of the child bring that child to the septon. The child is then passed to the septon as the parents inform the septon the name of the child. So, it would be the name of the child followed by the name of the house that it belongs to. And the septon will say, with all the blessings of the father, the mother, the warrior, the maiden, the smith, the crone, and the stranger, I give the name of the child and the house that it comes from a long and happy life. And that is the naming ceremony for the faith of the Seven. Now, the next one that we go to would be a wedding. Now, like earlier, the wedding would happen in a sept. And with the septon and the groom standing in the middle of the sept, the bride and the bride's escort would walk down the walkway to where the groom and septon stand. And once the bride has arrived and stood beside the groom, the septon would say to the groom, "You may now cloak the bride and bring her under your protection." At which time the groom does this, and then the septon would say to all people that have gathered for the wedding, would be, "My lords, my ladies, and all of my peoples, we stand here in the sights of gods and men to witness the union of man and wife, one flesh, one heart, one soul, now and forever. So, in the sight of the Seven, I hereby seal these two souls, binding them as one for eternity. Look upon one another and say the words." The groom and bride turn, holding hands. The groom would say, "Father, smith, warrior, maiden, crone, stranger, I am hers and she is mine, from this day until the end of my days." And then the bride would say, "Father, smith, warrior, mother, maiden, crone, stranger, I am his, he is mine, from this day until the end of my days," at which point they both kiss and the ceremony is finished. Then, of course, after this comes a wedding feast which can last for many, many hours, where all of the guests would bless the happy couple, giving them gifts and hoping that they have a happy, long marriage and are blessed with many children. Once the feast has finished, there is a ceremony that is done which is called the bedding. And what normally happens is, during the feast, the servants of the happy couple would be preparing the marital bed chamber. And once this has been completed, the ladies who are at the feast would prepare the gentleman by undressing him and explaining to him how to pleasure his wife and getting him generally prepared so it doesn't take him long to arrive at the junction where he can pleasure his wife. Similarly, the men at the feast would do something very similar to the bride, but in their case what would happen would be that they would undress her and explain to her how to get the best outcome from their first night together. Then, as they are both being carried to the bedchamber by the people that are carrying them, they are placed in the bed, and then all the people that were at the feast would leave but stand outside the bedchamber and listen to what would be happening. At this point, like I say, the newlyweds are left alone and they are left to their own devices to consummate their wedding. Now, the next thing which would happen would be, if you're particularly a king, would of course be a coronation. Now, a coronation would only happen in King's Landing at the Great Sept of Baelor. And what would happen in, of course, would be the High Septon would be standing in would be sitting in the sept, where there is a stool placed in the centre, and the king would walk all the way from the Red Keep all the way to the Great Sept, having been cheered and praised by the people of King's Landing. Once he's arrived at the High Septon, he sits upon the stool and he says his name and the house that he comes from. And then the High Septon would say, "May the Father grant him power of justice. May the Mother grant him mercy. May the warrior grant him courage. May the maiden grant him virtue. May the smith grant him strength. May the crone grant him guidance. And may the stranger grant him power to see the unknown. In the light of the seven, I now proclaim the name of the king, the house that he comes from, the number of the name in which he comes in the list of kings, the king of the Andals and the first men, lord of the seven kingdoms and protector of the realm." Then the High Septon will place the crown upon the king's head, and he shouts to all gathered, "Long may he reign!" To after which the coronation is finished. Now, of course, the only other thing that happens after this would be a funeral, which would happen in a sept. The Septon and the Silent Sisters would be awaiting with the body of the deceased, as lords, ladies, and people of the community would wish to come to the funeral. And as they walk past the body, they would say, "To the seven, I pray for the soul of the name of the deceased," and from the house that they came from. The same way that the father, the mother, the warrior, the maiden, the smith, the crone and the stranger did in their life. And once all of the people have prayed their blessings upon the deceased person, the Septon sets the body alight and it burns. Now, I do know that I did mention the Silent Sisters there. Now, the Silent Sisters are a sworn service of women that belong to the Faith of the Seven. And what they do is, when a person has died, they handle the body in preparation for the funeral. And what they usually do is that they would remove certain organs from the body. They would wash the body, they would dress the body for the funeral, and they would prepare it, and they would drain all the blood from the corpse, and they would cover it in spices to make sure it smells nice, herbs and salts and things like that, just to hide the smell of decay. So, and like I say, during the funeral, when the people that are praying for the deceased, they would be there too, just to make sure that no one got too uncomfortable with either the smell of the decomposing body, or they just overcame with the upset, and they would, if anything did happen, they would be on hand to assist with awakening people that may have fainted or got too upset, and so forth. So generally they are there just to make sure everyone has a nice funeral. Now, there is a certain kind of guard within the Faith of the Seven, which is called the Faith Militant. They are, there's two of them. There are the Warrior's Sons, which are an order of knights that renounce their lands, their gold, and all their possessions to fight for the Faith of the Seven. They are sworn swords to His High Holiness, the High Septon, and they wear silver armour, unlike most knights that wear gold. They have cloaks of whichever colour they desire, and their swords, unlike most knights who wear long swords, they have short swords with a handle that shows that they are Faith Militant. And their less well-equipped fellows are called the Poor Fellows, which are a much humbler group of people, which they are commoners and women. And what these individuals do is that they would go around and send word about they would go around the Seven Kingdoms declaring their faith and trying to convert people. They are very similar also to the Begging Brothers, which do not carry weapons because the poor fellows do. They carry a small sort of dagger, which is there to protect them. But the begging brothers do not. They walk around in brown robes, and they go around the woods and forests and talking to the small folk about the faith of the Seven. Hello everybody, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Over the next couple of weeks, like I said previously, I am hoping to do more of these videos, so my first actual video for this series will be released in the new year. Like I said, I hope you enjoy it, I hope you have a good week. See you next time.